Second one is 10x.
Wow. Okay.
10x the initial investment we were talking.
What's up, guys? Today we have special guest Kaleo Agsalda. He's a real estate investor, developer, broker, and he owns and runs a local real estate education school. Welcome to the show, bro.
Thanks, Daniel.
So we talked talking a little bit before this, and like you started like not too long ago, but you're doing so many things right now. You've got your own education school, you're doing real estate investing, you have your own brokerage, you're doing some development. Like, how are you doing so many things, and like where did this all begin?
You know, we just kind of take the path that we're given, and I have more than I deserve. I don't deserve any of this, and I'm just really grateful to be able to steward a bunch of va'a, or a bunch of canoes.
What so va'a, that means canoe?
Yeah, it means canoe. Yeah, and just everything that we have stewardship of can be considered a va'a, or a vessel. Like you own multiple businesses. Each of these businesses is a va'a, right? And you may have a captain for each va'a.
Got it. So I mean, like in your journey, you're slowly accruing like more and more va'as, right? Like you kind of have like a fleet now. But when you first started, how did you start? Or how did you get started with everything?
I was a musician.
Oh, really?
I had one vessel. I had the guitar and my voice.
Guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's what Kaleo means. It means the voice.
And so but how long ago, how did you actually get started with real estate or real estate investing?
I do need to go back home.
Okay.
Back to where we started. My great grandfather owned a lot of land in the Ilocos region of the Philippines.
Okay.
And he acquired it through kind of an interesting means by lending out money and then placing liens on borrowers' land. Okay. Right. And then when they couldn't when they couldn't repay, then he was able to acquire.
So he had like the collateral was the land. So he slowly started to accumulate more and more land in the Philippines.
Right. And so the process in Spanish is called pacto directo. Of placing liens on property, and the Filipino word for that is Agsalda.
Okay, so that's kind of like where your last name kind of comes from.
It means to redeem.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you're growing up, was that you kind of had your grandfather as an example? Is that how you kind of got started?
So my great grandfather had sold off property. He had a bunch of kids. He had 10 kids, and he wanted to make sure that all of them were educated. So he sold off the land in order to send them to college, which was a pretty magnificent feat in the 30s.
Yeah, that's huge in the 30s.
Yeah. So. And so my grandmother, even though she came to Hawaii when she was about maybe 40, 41, my grandfather got married late. So they got to Hawaii in their 40s, and my grandmother took with her, even though she couldn't take the land, she took the knowledge.
Got it.
She took it with her, the understanding of leverage and of investing.
So it's kind of like investing and land has kind of been in your family's line all the way from the very beginning since they've been in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is like as kids, like we inherit like a lot of things from our parents. We inherit like maybe like their wealth, maybe their looks, like some of their talents or their nuances. But a big part we inherit is also like their knowledge and their perspective of the world.
Yeah, big time. And so one of my favorite stories about real estate investing actually goes back to Wailua, where my grandmother bought their first house.
Okay.
If not for the kindness of a neighbor who had said, "Hey, I'm selling my house," and Senang, that was my grandmother's name, just pay me what you can.
Wow. Okay. That's very kind.
Yeah. Just big generosity from a neighbor down the street. This was on Kuhi Street. And he was a family friend, but back in those days on the North Shore, a family friend is family.
Yeah. Especially Hawaii back then, it was so much smaller, and so the community was a lot more tight knit, right? Because there were just less people, so we had to look out and take care of each other a lot more.
Yeah. And they really did. So my grandmother got involved in real estate investing not because of her savvy, not really even because of her background, but because of the kindness of a neighbor.
Okay. So how did you get started? I mean, did you start off as a developer, investor, broker? Where was your start in real estate?
I started working for my dad when
Okay.
I was, 17 years old in high school.
Okay.
And I hated it.
Really?
Oh, man, I hated it.
What
Yeah.
what did you do for your dad?
I was just working in the office.
Okay.
So
like the typing stuff up, like
Right,
administrative stuff. So.
right. Back office kind
And
of
your
stuff.
dad, what was your dad?
My dad is a general contractor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but specializing in landscaping at the time.
Got
So
it,
also
got it.
working with the land.
Okay. Okay.
So I remember a Thanksgiving where he knew I had the day off. So he said, why don't you go dig a ditch around the house? We need to take care of some drainage issues.
Well, I mean, so if you had to choose like working, digging ditches or office work, which one would you choose?
I guess I would choose digging ditches. But as long as you can work out, I don't know. I don't mind working outside if you
Yeah,
get to work with people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a big thing too. I think whenever like you're doing like labor, whenever you're working with other people alongside you, it's just more fun.
Yeah.
Versus like if you're by yourself, it becomes more monotonous, boring, and it kind of feels a little lonely.
Yeah, right. The biggest real estate move that I saw my dad make was he bought a piece of land in Wahiwa
Okay.
with a house, really a bad house, right?
Okay.
And it may have been in the early 2000s, I think 200,000.
Wow.
He
Okay.
bought a 10,000 square foot lot, 200,000.
That's like $1 million today, right?
Yeah. So basically, he built a brand new house, and I remember, I love my dad. He was complaining the whole time, like, "Oh man, 200,000, so expensive for like no even house." And then he goes, "Oh, I spent 150,000 to build a house," and then like nobody's complaining now, right?
Yeah. What do you think it's worth now in today's dollars?
It's probably $1 million.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. He built a big house, about 2,400 feet on 10,000 square foot lot.
Okay. And did he built it like using his guys?
Yeah.
Was it you guys? Okay.
No,
Okay.
it was his guys.
His crew and everything.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like your introduction. You started out like watching your dad like do like development investing.
Mm-hmm.
How did you first get started with maybe like your first deal or your first development?
I do want to go back again because even though I started with my dad, my grandma was actually the one that upgraded first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she took the Wailua house that she bought, and then she traded that up for a house in Pupukea.
Okay.
At the time,
When you say traded up, what do you mean by that?
she sold the Kuhi Street
Okay.
house, and then she bought a vacant acre.
So basically, like the kindness of a neighbor led to like that Kuhi Street. Once she owned that kind of basically like full free and clear, she sold that one and traded up for like a bigger plot of land.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then her brothers were able to build as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
So she bought the lot for $8,000, and I remember my grandpa was working as he worked for the army, but as a civilian.
Okay. Okay.
And he said, how are we going to afford this? And grandma said, don't worry about it. So she got her brothers to build the house. And, $16,000 for an
Yeah, I mean,
acre.
like, how can you afford? I mean, like, at the time, you was like $16,000. Now it's worth like $2 million or something
Yeah.
stupid, probably.
But I watched my dad leverage that property, which was free and clear, cash out refinance into his construction business. And he was able to accelerate his construction business through the value of
So
real estate.
your family kind of use real estate as like a launching pad too, and like I think a lot of homeowners do this today, where they'll buy one house and then like just barely by the skin of their teeth they'll get in, right? Then it'll appreciate over time. They'll slowly pay off the loan. They'll sell that, kind of launch into their next house. But
Yeah.
your parents did the same thing, but they launched it into a business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My first deal was the kindness of a friend.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of kindness going on.
A lot of
with your
kindness.
family.
Yeah. He was a pastor at my church,
Okay.
and he was selling his house in Kailua
Okay.
and buying a house in University, Manoa area.
Okay.
So it was two sides of a deal, and I literally never sold a home in my life.
So but you had your license at this point in time?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got your real estate license.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Greg Hester. And he, it was a complex deal too, with solar, photovoltaic and stuff. It was a house on the water. There's a lot of disclosures, but yeah, he took a risk on me.
So he kind of like is like he helped you get your first sale and then
Yeah.
also purchase on the other end as well too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got like a double dip on that guy. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like your introduction into like the whole world of real estate as an agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then I got some experience. Well, I didn't do a flip yet. I was fortunate enough to learn from a few clients
Okay.
who had been doing flips for a while.
So you're a real estate agent working for some investor clients.
Yes.
Learning while you're also becoming acting as their
Yes.
agent at the same time. That's very
so,
cool.
right now it's a very popular motif, and I'm not against it at all, where new investors will pay for the education on how to do a home flip.
Yeah.
I feel like I got the better deal. It was like I got paid to watch somebody do home flips.
I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, like whenever you can kind of combine two things at once, I think joining an internship or getting paid to work for an investor or for like another agent, that's like the best way, because you get paid and you get to learn the experience at the same time. Right?
Yeah,
So,
it was wild. So I was able to learn from their highlights and also learn from their lowlights, right? They were really open with me. They showed me the numbers. They showed me the books. And I was just kept a log and like, okay, as soon as I have enough financial strength and as soon as I have the contacts that they have, I'm going to
start doing your own flipping. Yeah. I mean, that's the best way. Like you watch, right? And you kind of ask a lot of questions as you're going through the process. Eventually the goal is to kind of strike it on your own and do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
At what point did you kind of feel like what was it that made you like confident enough to say like, hey, I learned enough or have enough resources that I'm ready to do my own first flip?
What gave me the confidence? I think I saw one of my clients.
Okay.
And he was pretty good at it, but I don't know. I felt like I could too.
Yeah. Was it because like you felt like this guy, he's a schmuck, and if he can do it, then I can do it?
He's definitely not a schmuck. You're definitely not a schmuck. But he did give me the confidence. I was like, well, if this guy could do it, then I think I can too.
I feel like there's a lot of people in the real estate space where like you look at somebody and they're like nobody's special, like they're just average Joe. They're not the smartest, they're not the brightest, they're not even the hardest working. Yeah. But they somehow are having like a lot of success. A lot of it just because the vehicle of real estate allows you to have those opportunities.
Yeah. If you get the right deal, you can afford to make a few mistakes.
Yeah. Or many mistakes, right? So,
yeah.
So I mean, that just goes to show you just like the power of like the opportunity sometimes is more important than the actual operator itself.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean,
teams are good. Partnerships are good too. Yeah. Don't go it alone.
Yeah. So what did your first flip look like? Was it a success? Did you make money? Was like
I made a little bit.
When you say a little bit, what does that look like?
20.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's a little bit in your world, but then for some people, that's like half their year salary, right? 20 grand. So
yeah. You're right. The first one you always want to be the best, right? Because you've never done it. So it's like, okay. So when I was a musician, my first guitar teacher, his name was Todd Adamski. I'd just written a song. He's like, let me hear some of your originals. So I'm playing it. And he's like, you know what? That's really good. It sounds like there's a lot going on. And I took that as a compliment. I'm like, oh, thanks. And like, yeah, I heard a little bit of this, a little bit of Earth, Wind, and Fire, a little bit of, and just naming off bands. I'm like, yeah, that's what I wanted to put in there. And he goes, you're going to write a lot of songs in the future. You don't have to put everything you know into this one song.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. And so as I was looking at that first home flip, a lot of times, you get excited. You want to show to the world like, hey, I'm an artist and I'm going to do this. And then guess what? There's no more money, right? Guess what? You took too long and now your holding costs are too high. So I think I just really wanted to do my best on that first one. And do I regret it? No. I don't regret doing my best.
I mean, if you made money in your first flip, I think that's a huge win. I mean, and you got learned lessons along the way, and you went through the whole process, because there's a big difference between watching somebody do it and then actually doing it yourself. It's such a big difference of learning and experience when you're actually like responsible for everything, and you're the one who's pulling the strings on everything versus you just see the strings that are getting pulled.
Yeah. For sure. How about you? What was your first flip like?
So mine was out of state, actually. It was like when I first started, I didn't have any money. So I was like, I can't play in Hawaii. It's too expensive. So I actually started out in Indianapolis, everything virtual, just read a lot of books and like listen to a lot of podcasts and just follow the checklist of what they said to do. And it's miraculously, just worked.
Yeah. What year was that?
2019.
Wow. Okay.
So, it's 2019. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think I was the same year.
Okay. The first flip.
Yeah.
So we're flipping your buddies.
Hey, yeah. Awesome. You've done way more than me though. So.
But okay, so like that was kind of like your first journey into like real estate investing or flipping.
Yeah.
But then since then you've done a lot more and like all over the island, and you're like doing some ground up development, a lot of things. How did you transition from like flipping into like the ground up game?
We're not doing too much ground up, but just if the situation calls for it, then you got to. Yeah. So it wasn't so much like this is what I'm planning to do, but sometimes in life, you just take what's thrown at you, and you really just got to read the land. Right.
A lot of times I think it's like, it's like they say like you got to play the cards that you have, right? Like you don't always have the best hand or whatever, but when you look at what you have in front of you, you can maximize it. So I feel like a lot of real estate deals or like opportunities are maximizing what the land or like the hand gives you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think no matter what your hand, no matter what you're dealing with, there's always a way to set something aright.
Yeah.
Right?
Explain that.
So one of my pastors told me, is like, hey, what we're dealing with right now, Kaleo, you're a mess.
Okay.
Right? And you got a bunch of wires crossed.
Okay.
And what God's doing with you, he's not going to go in necessarily one day and uncross all your wires and make sure everything's connected and put in the right place. But if you can just allow him to put one wire back at a time, then that's a step in the right direction. And a lot of times we're presented with a bevy of problems, right?
Yeah. As investors or business owners, right?
Absolutely. And we may get overwhelmed, right? And that's what I see with a lot of newer buyers or newer investors. They come in and like, nope, too hard, walk away, right?
I mean, I'm guilty of that too, but continue. So,
But if you walk onto the land and there's something that's speaking to you, there's something that's personal to you that calls you. It might be the kukui tree in the backyard. It might be the east facing entrance. It might be the proximity to the water. But if the land is speaking to you in a way where you say, you know what, this one's special, I'm going to give it a shot. Then we start to take a look at each of the components. And it's like, is this something that I can set aright? Right? Is with what I have in the tank, because we don't all have infinite money. With what I have in the tank, can I fix this? Yes. Okay. Electrical's out. Do I know a guy like that can do it within this budget? Okay. Then I can set these wires. Right.
I really like that analogy. I think a lot of times it's so overwhelming when you see like the mess of wires, right? But if you're like, okay, like I know there's a huge amount of like wires that are crossed in front of me. Let me just fix one, then move on to the next. And like the way that you're looking at the deal or like the opportunity is like, if you break it down to smaller pieces and just solve them one at a time, it's just a lot easier for us for our minds to wrap around and to us to have the confidence to kind of move forward.
Yeah, for sure. And an interesting thing happens between this is not my house to this is my house now. Because on this side of the boundary, you're like, I don't know if I want that problem.
Yeah.
On this side of the boundary, you don't have a choice. It's your problem.
That's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
It's like the amount of responsibility or the weight. Like now, if it's yours, you have to fix it. Like you don't have a choice, right?
Yeah. Even if I'm going to dig myself a hole, I'm going to take care of this. And it can be like that in life as well, right? We may look at other people's lives and we're like, wow, I don't want that problem. As soon as you go through something and you're like, oh no, it's my problem. Now you have to fix it. You have to look death in the eye and you have to look down that trench and you have to figure out how you're going to deal with it.
The challenge I think sometimes that myself included people run into is that sometimes it's our problem. Like we own the house, but we don't want to say that we own the house. We still want to put the problem off into somebody else. But
how?
I mean, let's say like we have a flip, right? And we're going on, and it's like, I was like, all these problems, like I don't want to deal with it. So like you're like an ostrich, you put your head in the sand, right? And like you put it off, or you're too scared to make a move, and so like now like debts are piling up, or problems are continuing to rise, and you don't want to jump in and solve them just because it's so like overwhelming for you. But then like if you just like, okay, like this is my problem, like it might not be my fault, but it's still my responsibility.
That's right.
Then like when you take that responsibility, now you can start to move like the ball down the line. But if you just run away or you're too scared to touch it or look at it, now the ball never gets moved down that line.
Yeah, that's a really key thing that you said. It might not be my fault, but it's my responsibility. I think if more people took that mindset toward their businesses, toward their careers,
just your financial situation, right?
Even like your relationships, right? Like, oh, it's not my fault. It doesn't matter. It's your responsibility.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a challenge, right? Because it's very easy for us to like run away from our problems. But whenever we can just take responsibility, like you mentioned, and say like, hey, this is not my house. Okay, this is my house. I need to take it on. Then that's when it kind of like the change or like the magic really happens.
Yeah, yeah. It's not my fault. It's my responsibility, though. That's good.
So walk us through like the journey. So you started off flipping. You flipped one house.
Yeah.
How did you go? So because like there's a huge gap between like your first house flip, then now you're doing development. You're a broker. You're doing like a lot of like you own a real estate education school. There's so much to unpack there. Like take us through the journey.
Gosh, I guess there's so many stories that I want to tell, but
pick the most crazy or interesting ones.
I started to okay. So the first house, I did a little. I'm sorry, I did a lot.
Okay.
I made a little.
Okay.
Okay. So it was my first flip was probably the least profitable.
Okay.
Of all of them, which is normal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, most guys even like lose a little bit of money on the first one, so
yeah.
it's good that you made money.
The second one was 10x.
Wow. Okay.
10x the initial investment. We're talking buy with 5% down,
Okay.
put some of your commission in. So now it's buy with 2.5%
Okay.
down, hold for 2 years, add a unit. And that was the biggest profit I ever made.
What would you end up making on that guy?
Can I not say?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So we made good, and maybe too much, because I
Okay.
don't know that I don't know that the character that I had at the time was sufficient to handle the weight of the success.
I mean, that's the thing about when you first start in real estate, you want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But sometimes like the worst thing that can happen to you is you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because like number one, like you don't feel like you don't really earn it. Like you won't go through like the challenges, and then you also think that it's too easy and you expect it. So like now you're setting yourself up for like a disappointment down the line because it came too easy too fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt like, I don't know. I felt like it was me, right?
Yeah,
it was me. And one of the big time developers was talking to me about it. He's like, "Well, you can't take credit for that. The market kind of shot up." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're a real one."
Yeah.
He's been around decades, and when he kind of pointed that out. But the second one, I did very little, and I made a lot.
Yeah.
And so when the third one came around, I wanted to keep that mindset because I wanted that money, right? And so I tried to do as little as possible and still try to capitalize on the max. So minimal input, maximal output, which from a business perspective is good, but from a character perspective for me at the time, it wasn't good.
It didn't kind of align with like your core values.
Right. Well, I think at the time I was still looking for my core values. I had a lot of not really knowing who I was and what I was about. So we got into escrow. It was a high value property because of the land.
On the purchase or on the sale side?
I got a good deal because I typically try to buy the worst house on the street.
Okay.
Yeah, buy the worst house on the street and then make it match.
Got it. Yeah. Right. The rest of the neighborhood, right? So,
yeah. Oh, we don't want to overbuild, right? But in this case, I did a little, and we got into escrow
to sell it.
Yeah, to sell it. We're selling now, and there were some issues with the topography of the land. It's located close to the water, and the buyers canceled because of the disclosures. Right, there was some flooding. Okay, and so no problem. We got a backup offer.
Yeah.
The second buyers come in, successful people, right? Nice neighborhood, and really good agent too. I really respect this agent. She brought the buyers, and I could tell there was some mutual respect. We used to be at the same brokerage firm, and she told me her buyers wanted to cancel the second set of buyers, and it had to do with like the upgrades that we did or lack thereof, as well as the topography, the lay of the land. And she said, "Kaleo, you knew about this. How come you didn't fix it? I know you're a contractor." And I didn't have anything to say. And I knew that I didn't do my best.
Yeah.
So your question was about like the journey. This is part of the journey. This is kind of where I turned. And I couldn't fix it. There was no money left in the tank. Right. You know how it is when you're a real estate investor. It's like you got zero money. Your credit cards are maxed out. Right.
Yeah.
you don't go out to eat. Your friends
Yeah.
invite you out to eat. You ain't going out to eat.
Yeah, you're a real
Right.
estate investor, but then like you got like no cash, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And so that second time, what that realtor said, she's like, basically, she was telling me, is like, hey, we expected better from you, not just me, but all of us.
Yeah.
We expected more from you.
I mean, that sounds like it was a huge wake up call for like your journey.
Yeah.
And I think it's sometimes it's so painful to take a look at yourself from like a very objective view,
Yeah.
but it's so healthy. I think if we can just do that more often, it helps us to like, because we're always work in progress, right? Like we're not perfect. Like you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We have a lot of like flaws and things. We're always trying to get better.
Yeah.
But whenever we can get like a mirror into like ourselves, sometimes it's us, sometimes it's somebody else.
Yeah.
It just helps us along in our journey to grow as a person, in a character, in skill and ability, like in so many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was at a crisis point, and I just went to the beach. I went to OCC Beach by Outrigger.
Okay.
And I was just sitting. I had my notebook with
Okay.
me, and I was just writing. And I think God knew I needed a sage. I needed somebody wise to come in. And so, lo and behold, this woman out of Laie comes
Okay.
over. What's she doing on the South Shore?
Just like randomly, like
Yeah.
you're sitting on the beach
Yeah,
and she comes
and
to
she
talk
goes,
to
hey,
you.
what you working on? It was like, I'm just working out some stuff. And she goes, what do you do? It's like, I develop, I buy properties, fix, and resell. I go, what do you do, Auntie? I'm like, I teach aina literacy.
Oh, interesting.
I said,
Aina, what is for our viewers? What is Aina?
yeah, aina is land.
Okay.
Yeah. She goes, I teach aina literacy. And I'm fascinated already. I'm like, what is that? Her name's Kaleo Hano.
I mean, it's so connected to like what you're doing. I mean, and her name's Kaleo too.
Yeah,
Oh,
her name's
interesting.
Kaleo too. Kaleo Hano. If you're watching this, Auntie, thank you. And she said, I teach aina literacy. I said, what is that? She said, kids nowadays, they think they're so smart with their iPhone. They look at the water and they can tell the wind speed and what time is high tide, low tide, and where the waves gonna come. But take uncle who has aina literacy, master navigator. He no more app, right? He don't watch the news, but he can tell you when high tide, when low tide. He can tell you where the prevailing wind, and more better, he can tell you when the fish gonna come, so that the family can eat. And so what aina literacy is listening to the mo'olelo of the land.
What is mo'olelo?
Is the story.
Okay.
Listening to the mo'olelo. She said, Kaleo, the land cannot speak. I mean, it speaks, but it needs you to tell the story. Now, a lot of people from the West, they come in and they try to develop the land with a Western mindset, with no regard for the aina, the topography, where's the high point, where's the low point, where's the sun, where's the wind.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you're fighting against the land, or just kind of like making it subdue to your will,
Right.
versus working with it. Like, what is it giving me,
Yes.
right?
So we're juxtaposing a superimposition of my design onto this canvas, as opposed to a harmoniousness with the canvas, right? Where the canvas is actually part of the art.
Yeah.
itself.
I like that. I feel like a lot of times, just when we're kind of like designing a house, especially when there's like any kind of topography issues,
Yeah.
like the common thing is like you already have the design in mind, so you're like, I want it to look like this, right?
Right.
But then if you take a step back, you're like, actually, like, if we just adjust the wall this way, like make it like the where the land is actually facing, or the way like it fits the road, etc. You'll make your life so much easier, and there's something so much more harmony with the process.
Right.
So, yeah, so.
And so we had a project in Ko'olaupoko, that's the Kaneohe area. And so as we're looking at it, we're like, okay, well, the wind comes in from the bay.
Okay.
And the bay faces the east. All right. So the wind comes that way. So how come the windows are on this side of the house and not on this side of the house? If we want to conserve energy, we should put a window next to the door. This should be a screen door, and you should have a window next to the door.
Because you get a natural breeze going through in that case.
Right. And then if you want to have picture windows, we're going to put them not on the side where the sun rises. We're going to put them on the other side, on the west side. So you have your picture windows. That way you have light in the house, even though it's not hot.
Yeah.
And then we have the ko'olaus over here. So after about 5 p.m., the sun it doesn't set, but it peaks over the ko'olaus. So now we have full daylight.
Yeah.
But not direct sunlight. So you want the picture windows on the west side. So taking into account the the aina, right? Listening to the stories of the
yeah.
land to inform the art that we're producing.
The thing is, like, I wonder how many of your buyers will appreciate that. I mean, like, when you're buying the house, like, you don't realize all these things, but when you've lived there for like 10 years, you're like, why did they put the windows here? Like, or like, I'm so glad they put the windows on this side, right? Or the way they design like the layout and things.
Yeah. And so, I guess to go back to Auntie Kaleo Hano on the beach that day, she was telling me all about what aina literacy is.
Okay.
She's saying, you know, it's so important that we know the stories. The land cannot speak. And so what you will do through your design is you will tell the story of the land. And I'm like crying now. And she says, your first 2 houses, where were they? And I said, they're in Wahiwa. That's the Wailuamoku. And she said, oh, that's Malo'o. That's aina Malo'o. I'm like, what is that, Auntie? She goes, that's dry land. So you have a aina literacy. How long took you to sell? I'm like, was fast, Auntie. Yeah. So you understand the aina Malo'o. But this one, and she knew nothing about the property.
Yeah.
She goes, it's close to the water. Huh? I was like, yeah. How did you know? She's like, because the aina still has something to teach you. And she will not let you go until you understand the story. And crying again.
Yeah.
And she says, Auntie, one more thing. The buyers were complaining about the electrical. We didn't redo the electrical. They told me I had all kinds of problems. I'm not an electrician. I didn't know all that. And she goes, electricity. You know who brought electricity to Hawaii? I said, no. She goes, King Kalakaua. She goes, did you know? I was like, yes. Iolani Palace had electricity before the White House. Every kid that grew up in Hawaii knows that. And she says, you know who he entrusted to turn on the lights? I'm like, no, who's that? It was Pauahi. Because he entrusted not just the new technology, but the knowledge and the enlightenment moving forward to Pauahi. You may know her as Pauahi Bishop, right? Bishop Estates. And she said, you know what? If you cannot fix, bring into the house the symbol of what you would fix with.
What do you explain that? I'm not following.
So she said, you know, if you are wishing them health and prosperity, then it may be as simple as planting a ulu tree, a breadfruit tree, to show your goodwill. And I said, Auntie, I just bought one from Daniel in Waimanalo. I bought a ulu tree. She's like, good. Maybe it's time you plant the kukui tree. So kukui was the word for electricity.
Got it.
When Kalakaua brought electricity to Hawaii. She said when he brought that new technology, he brought a new lexicon. There was no word for electricity. So what he had to do was he had to take a word that Hawaiians knew. And they know that kukui was oil and light. And so what is this technology that brings light? It's kukui. It's the new kukui. And so she said, it's too late to fix the electric, but you know what? You still bring the light. So you plant the kukui tree.
Got it.
I planted the kukui tree then.
Okay.
The next day, I get a call from an agent who represents a native Hawaiian who has been looking at that property since before I bought it.
Really?
4 years prior
to
that day. They knew about the flooding.
Okay.
They were okay with it. And they said, you know what? My grandfather used to hold my hand. We would walk down this very street. We would walk past this house. And we would walk to the water. And this land is special to us, and we will take it. It's not our problem. Like we didn't create the flooding issue. We didn't create the electric issue. It's not our fault. But we will make it our problem.
Awesome. I mean, they'll take the responsibility.
They'll take the responsibility.
I love that. I mean, I love that mindset of they're looking at something, and it's like it's important to them, right? So like they see this beautiful thing, this piece of land, this house, and they're like, you know, like I see the potential over here, and I know that comes with a lot of problems, but I'm willing to take on this problem, this responsibility, and make it and fix it and make it better.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think they had already made that transition. They had started to see it as theirs, right? And once someone makes that transition from I don't want this problem to it is our problem, that's a magic moment.
Yeah.
And one of my kahus, kahu is the Hawaiian word for fisherman.
Okay.
So when the missionaries came to Hawaii, there were no sheep, right?
Okay. In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Okay.
So how would Hawaiians understand what a shepherd is? So instead of trying to contrive a word for shepherd, they said, well, what do we have? We have fish. And what is the keeper of the fish? Is a kahu.
I see. Yeah.
And so what one of my kahus, pastors, told me is the aina will choose its own kahu. The aina will choose its own kahu. That is, the land will choose the caretaker. And I feel like in a very real sense, in that scenario, the aina had already chosen its next kahu. And I, as a real estate owner or developer, I'm simply preparing the place for the next.
Yeah.
For
You
the
know,
next
I feel
kahu.
like a lot of times our job as investors is we're just kind of like putting things together or putting people and like pieces of property together. So like we're not really the ones maybe on social media, like we built this house or like we did this thing, but in reality, we're just connecting the people who are eventually going to live there to the people who are going to like transition it over into them.
Yeah,
So,
big
like,
time.
We're kind of just more like connectors than really like that than actually workers.
Right.
Yeah.
Which almost goes against what I've been taught as a salesperson, because as a real estate salesperson, you want to tell people like, hey, yeah, you want your piece of paradise, right? This is your land. And it's true, but it's also, if you take a more macro view, the land supersedes us in time, right? How long has Oahu been here?
And it's going to be there long after you're dead, right?
Right. And so Kahu Pimental, he taught me the same concept of the land is greater than us. So in Hawaiian, did you know there's at least two words for the word mai?
No, I didn't.
For possessory.
Okay.
So the word ka'u is the word that we use for something that is smaller than us, something that we can hold.
Like
so
a pen or something.
So I would say ka'u penne.
Okay.
Ka'u avocado.
Got it.
But there's a different word for something that is bigger than us, that has begotten us.
I see.
So for my son, I don't have a son, but if you had a son, you would say, this is ka'u keiki. This is my son. But you wouldn't say ka'u makua. You wouldn't say this is my father. You would say ko'u. And ko'u differentiates between this is my that I possess and this is my that possesses me.
Interesting. That's super interesting. So when you're looking at land, it's
right.
What is it?
Now, if you come with a Western mindset, a non-Pacific, non-oceanic mindset, when you look at land, you would say ka'u.
I got it.
We will cut.
We will possess.
Dispose,
we own. Yeah.
We possess. We own.
Yeah.
Whereas a more Pacific mindset would be ko'u. The aina is absolutely ko'u.
That's so interesting. So when when Hawaiians are looking, or Pacific Islanders are looking at land, do they use ko'u when they describe it?
Yeah, big time. Well, I think because the language is somewhat lost, the concept is lost. So much of values are passed on through the language, which is why at Hawaii Institute of Real Estate, we try to incorporate the Hawaiian words the concepts into the education.
You're talking about your real estate education school.
Right. And so when we talk about the great mahele with Kauikeauli, that's Kamehameha III, in 1948, his idea was, I want the people to be able to be the stewards of the land. And so he took his kingdom. You imagine in that time, he was 100% of owner of all of the kingdom of Hawaii. Yeah. And so he gave away half, 50% of his land, and he said, this is for the people to steward. Now, something may have been lost in translation, because a lot of the islanders may have thought to themselves, how can I have land as ka'u? Like, how can
like I own ownership versus like stewardship.
Good story, right? You're gonna give us land. And so a lot of people did not understand the concept of using and utilizing and leveraging and profiting off of land, because the Hawaiian concept of wealth is vai vai, which means water. You got lots of water.
I see, yeah.
If you got lots of water, you got lots of fruit, you got lots of food, you got lots of food, then you feed everybody.
Just the way that you like view like ownership or property in general from the Hawaiian standpoint in this case versus like the Western, it's like it's just so different.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And an interesting thing about food is you can only eat so much. Right.
Yeah.
Where I grew up in Ko'olaupoko, that's Pupukea on the North Shore. Whenever we had like a big party, whenever we had Christmas or a holiday, there's always the fruit. There's always the yield of the land, and everybody just take.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is, you want to share, but the second reason is, like, what are we gonna do with 100 pounds of avocados?
On excess, right?
Right. So I went to my dad's house, and he's got like probably 300 pounds worth of avocados.
Wow, crazy. And
he's like, here, take. And he's got like 50 pounds. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I was like, well, look, we have so much and we cannot consume this.
Yeah.
So we're just going to share. And that's what my parents told me. That's what my grandparents told me. And I know it's the same in a lot of Pacific cultures. You take care of the land. The land takes care of you. So here's the story of the Eva moku. I had a listing coming up in Eva.
Okay.
And I had a whole bunch of avocados just in my truck.
I mean, like from the house?
Yeah, from the house, like right here, these avocados.
Okay.
And so I was checking out the listing, and we could not find a parking stall. I was there with Anthony, my latest hire. What's up, Anthony? Shout out. And we couldn't find a guest parking stall. And we were like, you know what? It's a quick listing appointment. We're just going to park right here. Big no. Agents do not just park in assigned stalls. But it was the middle of the day. We figured, who's going to come home?
Yeah.
So we go to the listing appointment, talk over the paperwork, and I think, you know what? I should check on my truck. So I ran to the parking stall. Lo and behold, there's a big Hawaiian dude in a big truck parked right in front of his stall with my car in it.
Yeah.
Hey, this is my stall, bro. Oh, sorry, brother. Sorry. So sorry. Brother, you like some avocado? I'm like, no. Okay. So I move my truck, right? He's backing into his stall. And I bag up probably about 15 pounds worth of avocados.
Wow, okay.
Right? And I bring it to him. I bag it. I'm like, brother, I'm so sorry. Here. He looks at the bag, looks at me, looks at the bag. Grabs the bag. He goes, you know what, brother? I'm sorry. I was like, no. I'm sorry. Okay. Take care, Hawaiian. Take care. And I get back. I tell that story to my girlfriend back home. And she goes, wow, would you look at that? Even now, the land still take care of you.
It's so true. That's so true. That's a good story.
Yeah, thanks. And so, that concept of the land being greater than us.
Yeah.
We as developers, we as real estate salespersons, we're doing a job, right? We're connecting the land with its new kahu. And that, when you think about it in those terms, is a very sacred thing, right? Because the land in the old days, it wasn't just something to cut up and to profit off of and to leverage. In the old days, if we don't have land, we don't eat. Right. And that's why land was such a big deal in the past. And it is still a big deal today, but we're so disconnected from how much land is a part of us.
The importance of it.
Yeah. That it has become, it can become, it doesn't have to be, but it can become very commercialized. It can become very capitalistic. But at the heart of it, land is very spiritual and it is very life-giving. And it is an analogy to God, right? God being the source of life, God being the bread of life, and that which is our ultimate nourishment.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, I feel like you bring a very like spiritual kind of perspective to like investing, development, and like just like that kind of opened my eyes to a lot of different kinds of like the ko'u ka'u thing. That's like I've never heard of before. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And so as you're on this journey of real estate investing development, eventually you decide to open up your own real estate school.
Yeah.
What brought that? How'd you get that idea, and what has been like so far?
So I was in real estate and I brought in some of my friends.
Okay.
You know, just some people that I wanted to
Like
work
buddies
with.
from high school?
Yeah. Just buddies that I know just some of them were clients and some of them were just friends. Jeremy and Leon, my guys.
Okay.
And brought them in and just taught them what I knew. You know,
As a real estate agent.
as
you
a
mean?
real estate
Okay,
agent.
okay.
And they did extremely well in that first year. And I thought to myself,
What year was this?
it was the best year to be a realtor in the history of the world.
2001?
21, yeah,
Okay,
2020,
okay.
21,
Yeah, 2001.
22. But I had deceived myself because it wasn't that I was such a great trainer. These were just two amazing men with expansive networks and high competence. And they're out there, they're starting businesses. They own their own companies now. And real estate is, it's not a side hustle, but it's running in tandem
I see,
with their
yeah.
operations that they have going on right now. And I thought, well, they're doing really well. Like, what if we share this education?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And what it has turned into in the last couple years has become a way for us to be able to impart values of Oceania, of the Pacific, into the new class of realtors. It's not a huge moneymaker. You know, it's not like we're not going to take over the world with real estate education or anything.
Yeah.
But it is something that I believe God gave me for the betterment of the community.
So it's kind of like a passion project for you, like that. I mean, I feel like whenever we get to like impart or share our stories or values with other people, it's always like very like it almost blesses us, right? Like it's so fun to share and to give back. And so it sounds like your real estate school is like your way of like all of the success and all the things that you've accumulated over the years. It's your opportunity to share that with some of the up and coming guys who are coming up.
Yeah, to share, but also it's an opportunity for me to meet people. And I've met some great people that I'm working with right now.
So you're kind of expanding your network at the same time while you are like making a little bit of like profit and like helping to build the community.
So right now we teach a 60-hour in-person certified course. It's certified through the state of Hawaii. And the people that are taking the course are required to be there for 60 hours. So we're spending a lot of time together. And there are other schools that offer online or part-time. And we did those, you know, we do some online, we did offer part-time. But what I found is the quality of individual that is willing to give up 60 hours of their lives nonstop, bang it out. I end up meeting very highly motivated individuals.
The thing too is like whenever like you're in person, there's a different type of relationship and like download that happens versus like if you're online. Like there's way more engagement. There's way more personal. Like it's way more like personalized and just you really feel the person. And so that's one of the reasons why we don't do any Zoom like podcasts. All of our podcasts are like in person because I like the back and forth. I like the energy like that you get from the other person.
Yeah,
you know,
big time. I did see a Google Meet link on your invitation. I was confused. I was like, oh no, am I going to zoom in?
It's like it's an automatically generated, I think, this thing. So
yeah, so I get to meet great people, really highly motivated, highly skilled, highly competent individuals, and I feel really lucky because I'm able to start relationships and start partnerships potentially with people like-minded and people who really are giving it everything they got.
Yeah. I mean, it's so genius what you're doing. I'm saying if you're looking at your education school, it touches so many points, right? Number one is you're teaching. So as you teach, you get better.
Yes.
Like you're refining your craft and you're kind of like figuring out some of the things as you're going through the process. People are going to ask you questions you never thought about before. You're going to get different perspectives. Yeah. You're building your network because you're like hungry, like people who are in the same space as you, right? Real estate. And then like, so you're kind of like, you're getting to know, they may or may not work with you, maybe now or in the future. So you're building your network like organically. You're also making a little bit of profit, right? People do pay for the schooling at the same time. Yeah. And then it's just like, it's building your brand and your network and you're imparting. There's so many things that are happening from this one endeavor that you guys are doing.
Yeah. And real estate is kind of the hub.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's kind of similar to like, obviously like maybe like our podcast because like the podcast, we get to meet cool guys like you.
Yeah.
Like we'll chat before and after. We always have like really good, interesting conversations. It helps us a little bit with our exposure. We have like free content for like our Instagram or YouTube and things. And so it just like whenever you can find like some like one thing that hits on multiple points, it's just so efficient and so like rewarding, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. And I guess I could put a bow on that story that I was telling about Auntie Kaleo Hano. So we haven't crossed paths since.
So it was just that one time.
It was like just that one time. She changed my life. And what did I need to learn from that aina? In that season of life, it was, hey, you got to do your best no matter what. You know, it's the the profit is not as important as doing your best, right? Because I did projects where I did my best, I made a little, but man, that felt good, right? I've done projects where I made a lot, did not do my best, and I felt like I cheated.
Yeah.
You know? And so this next house that we did, it's in Ko'olaupoko in the Kaneohe, Ahupua'a. And we bought the house, man, it was busted up. It's like the roof was bad. There were plants growing in the roof. If
Wow,
you have ever
crazy.
seen one of those,
yeah,
right?
I mean, that's crazy.
It's not too far fetched. I'm sure you've seen some of those. But we went to it, and it was a grind to get closed because we were working with partners. But we picked it up, and the house was in a trust, so there were a bunch of moving parts.
Okay.
So we picked it up, and basically we took into consideration the wind and the sun.
Okay.
Right?
So you're listening to the land, like
right.
Auntie Kaleo was like you heard her voice while you guys were on this project.
Yeah. Just do your best. Listen to the mo'olelo. Don't try to superimpose your design, but understand where's the wind, where's the sun, where are the high points, where are the low points. And this house was beautiful because it was filled in fish ponds. Right?
Wow. Okay.
So in the aina where the kahu would gather the fish.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so it was filled in with coral, and which is a lot of kaneohe. It's fish ponds filled in with coral. So there's very little erosion because of that. It's compacted, hard surface, porous.
Okay.
Coral.
Interesting. Okay.
And certain types of plants work there. But in the corner, I saw a huge kukui tree.
Okay.
Right. So, like the small one that I planted on the last one, but just in full glory. And when I saw that tree, I was like, this one's calling me.
Yeah.
Right?
This is like, it has your name on it. Like
Yeah.
the kukui tree.
Yeah. So we bought the house, and, some of the partners and some of the boys on the project, we worked out a lot of stuff. We worked out a lot of things in us, right? Decisions. We disagree on some decisions or division of the labor. We solved a lot of things with us as a group, and we were able to grow from that.
It's always fun when like you have a challenge and you disagree, and then eventually you work it out together, because we all see the world so differently. Like, like my perspective was nice is very different from what your perspective was nice.
Right.
What I think is like expensive is what you think is expensive. Like just things in general, like we see the world so differently. And so whenever you have partners, it's always a challenge.
Right.
But then whenever like you successfully overcome the obstacles together, it's so rewarding.
I couldn't agree more. And so we overcame a lot. We took our group pictures, and
I love it.
It was something that, if we overspent, we're okay with it because we're proud of this, right? This was our moment in time. This was our project. This is something that we sweat and something that we solved together.
Yeah. The thing is, like, whenever, like, if you look at, like, let's say this project in like in itself, it's like so you overspent, you did your best,
right?
And you could have made more money if you like were more stingy. But then if you take that same mindset like on a macro level, and like everything that you do, you're gonna become like more successful because you always give your best. And like there's a lot of like ancillary like kind of benefits that you're gonna get as you kind of do the same thing. And it might not be like just like this one battle, but like across the war or across like the macro scale, like it's so much more productive and so much more like powerful.
Yeah. And I guess what I would want to add to that for our investors is it doesn't have to be the most expensive to be your best.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, well, let's say the budget, we're here 10,000 on this particular aspect of the home. We can't go over 10,000. Well, do your best with 10,000.
I love that.
Right?
Such a good mindset. Tell us, explain this concept a little bit more.
So you can honor the project, you can honor the next family that's coming through as long as you do your best. People get mad if you're lazy, right? But even if the product is not as good as what some people might have hoped, if it was your honest best, then you cannot really get mad at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people think like, oh, let's say you're an investor, and like, oh, Kaleo said like do your best. I'm like, oh shoot, now we got to spend $500,000 every flip. I'm like, no, but let's say your budget is $250,000.
Okay.
do your best with $250,000.
Yeah.
And you know what? You can go home proud. You can sleep easy knowing that you did your best.
Sometimes too is like when you give yourself constraints, you actually just have to be more creative.
Yes.
Because like it's like that. Okay, like if you like spending money is lazy. Like like I can always solve problems by spending more money. But let's say okay, my budget is 10,000. Okay, now what can I do to make this 10,000? Okay, we're gonna have to create like the backdrop ourselves, or like that. We're gonna have to like get creative. We're gonna maybe I have to put in some sweat equity, whatever that looks like. But then now I'm not gonna like just like solve it with money. I'm going to solve it with creativity to like the problems.
Absolutely. So, and that is an expenditure in and of itself, right? Is your cognitive ability.
Yeah.
Like you might, like you said, money's lazy sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So we did our absolute best on that, and we put it on the market. And well, also your best on the brokerage side involves a different set of tools, right? From a marketing perspective.
Explain that.
So in the past, if I thought the house was going to sell itself, then maybe we don't stage, right? Maybe we save money on the photography, which is what we did on one of our first projects. We saved some money on the photography. We didn't stage, right? Just a bunch of things on the marketing side. But when I started Pacific Realty, I said, you know what? I need to let the market know that I'm about doing my best. And so we will empty the clip on your listing. I'm going to empty the clip on my listings to put the world on notice that when Pacific Realty takes your listing, they're going to do everything that is within their power.
You're going to squeeze every last drop out of that lemon.
Yeah. So we spent on the brand. We spent on the signs. We're spending on the website. We're spending upfront on the videography, the photography. We're spending upfront on the staging just to let all our clients know, hey, when Kaleo is taking care of this, when Pacific Realty is taking care of this, they are doing their absolute best for us.
You know, as a realtor or as a listing agent, whenever you're trying to sell a house, you have a couple of different responsibilities. One of the most important ones, I think, is the marketing or just getting your listing out into as many people as possible.
Right.
And so I mean, there's like the negotiation, there's paperwork and helping like handhold like the seller, etc. But then like if you can, like you said, like empty your clip on the marketing side of things, like do your very best, go above and beyond, then like you're never scratching your head wondering like, what if like this, I missed that one buyer because I didn't like give my best effort.
Right.
And so like the house might sell, but maybe like you missed out on a better buyer who would have offered more or been a cleaner close or would have been, etc. And so it's always like, if you give your best in every effort, like maybe one thing you might like spend a little bit more than you could have, than you need to, but then over the macro again, you're going to come out ahead because you're always giving your best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we emptied the clip and we got under contract in 4 days.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
And I got a call from the buyer's agent and said, hey, Kaleo, like we just sent you this offer. Could I tell you the story? I'm like, yeah, you can absolutely tell me the story. It's like, this property has been in my client's family for more than 100 years.
Wow.
They tried to buy it before you, but because the ownership was vested in a trust, the conservatorship, the trustee, was out of state. They did not sell to your buyer, to our buyer.
Yeah.
And plus the condition of the house, it was dilapidated, so it's hard to get a loan.
Yeah.
He said, buyer's dad lived in the house.
Wow. So this was his house. He actually lived in there like back in the day.
This was their house.
Wow.
Yeah. Native Hawaiian family. Right. And we looked at everything else that we had. I called the boys. I'm like, hey guys, this is what we're dealing with. And we had some Hawaiians in the group too, right? Not to say that there were any FFHA violations at all, but because it's just people, it's just business, right?
Yeah.
Them having been Hawaiian had nothing to do with anything, right? We took a look at all the offers, took everything seriously, but it did feel on a spiritual level that the aina is choosing its kahu.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the beauties you have as a developer, as an investor, is you can really you have some wiggle room to kind of give it to the most deserving like owners or whoever the aina is choosing, because like sometimes it's worth it to like sacrifice a little bit of profit for just like doing your best or giving like the to give me the best story or like the best, most deserving person. And so I know like you're not supposed to write cover letters or whatever, but like we always read the cover letters and we'll often give it to like the better cover letter over like the better price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So as a developer or just as a person, man, I was so honored to be a part of I don't even call it a transaction.
Their story.
The story. I was really honored to be a part of the mo'olelo, not just listening and telling, but being a part of the mo'olelo that will be told.
And you're proud of your part because you did your best, right? Like if you did like the bare minimum, you wouldn't be like so proud, but because you gave your best effort here, now like you're part of their story, but you're also like proud to be part of the story because like the effort that you put in.
Absolutely. And the story stretches not just in this house, but the house before and before and the arc of the character development, to be a part of that process. Of course, you don't like to be a part of the lows, a part of the low lights, but that allowed me to become the person that was able to create what I created at that point in time. And that's one of the most beautiful things about living the human experience, is that we are not simply listening to stories and telling them, but we're also allowed to be partakers in a story that's bigger than ourselves. And that's a real gift from God that is given to us by the land.
So good. You know, so like listening to your story is so inspiring. I mean, like your journey and like your character, like growth over time, your skills and ability, and like all the different kind of businesses you built. If somebody is kind of just starting out, like they're like a brand new either agent or investor, and they see like Kaleo, like I want to be like Kaleo one day, what kind of advice would you give to somebody like that?
You know, I just hired an operations manager, and he said something kind of similar in a text message as he was applying for the job. He said, Kaleo, I want to be like you. And that, as flattering as that sounds, I took the compliment, but I responded very quickly. And he'll tell you how quickly I responded. I said, I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be the best you, the best you that you can possibly be. And I think a lot of times if you're a younger investor, you're going to want to model yourself after another man, after another woman. And we create idols out of people in our lives. And I know that I've fallen victim to that. And that was my own choice, right? That was my own insecurities, and that was my own sinful heart, right? But one of the most valuable things that you can come into as an investor, as a business owner, and as a human being is a knowledge of yourself, that you are who God has made you to be is nothing to be ashamed of, right? There's a unique design on your life with unique skill sets, with unique contributions that you're going to make to this world. And you don't have to shrink away from that or be afraid of that. But you do need to do the very hard work of figuring out who the heck that person is.
That's really good.
Yeah. And it's painful because sometimes you might look at yourself and think, well, I'm not like so-and-so, right? I don't have these skill sets. I don't have these strengths. I'm not good at this or that.
Yeah. I mean, that's me all day, but yeah.
But we got to look into that darkness, you know? We got to look into that, and we got to understand our shortcomings and just bring them before the Lord. Like, hey, this is who I am, God. Here's my 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And I believe that you are a God that multiplies. And you do that through the gifts of the earth, right? With the bread, through the gifts of the sea, with the fish, and with a willing heart like me, you are able to feed many and provide wealth to many.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. If people want to find more about you or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'd encourage them to visit highrealtycourses.com. That's HI Realty, REALTY courses.com.
Awesome.
Love to meet you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, bro. Super appreciate your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Such an honor. Aloha.